Good morning, children. Today we are going to deal with the topic respiration in other organisms. So you all know how you all breathe, respire. You have a well-developed respiratory system. But what about the other organisms around you? We'll deal with a few today. So let's take the first organism, which is amoeba. It is a unicellular eukaryotic organism, and they live in aquatic habitats such as fresh and marine water, sometimes found in soil also. How do they respire? The respiration in amoeba occurs by simple diffusion. The oxygen dissolved in water or surrounding environment, it is diffused into the cell through the cell membrane. This oxygen is used for respiratory metabolic purposes. Carbon dioxide gas produced gets removed by simple diffusion again into the surrounding environment. Amoeba shows an aerobic type of respiration. So in amoeba, the respiration, it is taking place through the cell membrane, also called the plasma membrane. They does not possess a specific respiratory system. Then how do they respire? Through the cell membrane, which acts as the respiratory system. Okay, so in amoeba, as you see in the humans or any other higher organisms, they don't have a proper respiratory system. Instead, their respiration is done through the cell membrane or the plasma membrane. Oxygen enters and carbon dioxide leaves through the membrane. You can see in the picture itself, oxygen getting in the cell and carbon dioxide is leaving. The exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide occurs through the plasma membrane through simple diffusion. This word is very important. How is it entering and exiting? Through simple diffusion. Okay, so oxygen is taken up for respiration, and carbon dioxide, which is formed as a result of the metabolic activities, it is eliminated as waste. Now let's deal with the cockroaches. Respiration in cockroach. You can see in the picture a structure called tracheal trunk and spiracles. These help in the respiration in cockroaches. The respiratory organ in the cockroach, it is called trachea. It is a network of tubules spread all over its body. These are known as trachea. These open to the outside through openings called spiracles. You can see in the picture, the trachea, it is a network of tubules and they open outside through the openings called the spiracles. Oxygen diffuses directly into the tissues, and carbon dioxide diffuses from the tissues to the outside. And these cockroaches, they can hold their breath for up to 7 minutes. Their respiratory system is highly efficient, but there are no lungs. Instead, the insects, they draw in air through external valves called the spiracles and transport the air directly to the cells via tubes called the trachea. To stop breathing, they simply close the spiracles. Now the respiratory system in insects. Like all living things, insects respire by absorbing oxygen and excrete carbon dioxide. Unlike most of the air-breathing vertebrates, the insects, which are actually invertebrate animals, they do not breathe using lungs. Their respiratory organ, it is known as, spiracles. In the insects, the air enters inside the body through tiny holes called the spiracles, and the respiratory organ of the insects, the organ, when it is asked as organ, it is the tracheal tubes or the trachea. Okay, so right now you dealt with cockroach and the whole insects. It is trachea, the respiratory organ, and it is supported by spiracles. This respiration process is supported by spiracles. The next organism that you have to deal with is earthworm. Have you ever touched an earthworm? The skin of the earthworms, it feels moist. That is why they are called slimy creatures. The reason behind their moist skin is that the earthworm's breathing organ is their skin. Air can easily pass through the skin of an earthworm. The exchange of gases usually takes place through its moist skin and capillaries. In these regions, the oxygen gas is picked up by the hemoglobin dissolved in the blood and carbon dioxide is released out. Earthworms can also use their skin to move water and salts by active transport. You can see in this picture, the earthworms, they absorb oxygen and give off carbon dioxide through the skin. And as I said, the diffusion of the gases, it is made easy when the skin is moist. Let's deal with the scorpion now. Scorpions, they have book lungs as their respiratory organ. It consists of 4 pairs of cuticular pulmonary sacs. The book lungs are formed by this cuticle at the base of the appendages. Okay, so the scorpion, the book lungs are the respiratory organ of the scorpion. They are seen towards the posterior end of the abdominal cavity. Towards the posterior end of the abdominal cavity, the book lungs, not the lungs, it is somewhat like a book-like structure. So the name of the lungs is called the book lungs. Oxygen present in the air, it enters inside through the openings and dissolves into the body fluid. Carbon dioxide is expelled from the body fluid. You can see this is the structure of the book lungs. The oxygen enters inside through the openings and dissolves in the body fluid, and carbon dioxide is expelled from the body fluid. Now again, another organism with book lungs as the respiratory organ is the spider. The spiders, they breathe with book lungs and trachea. Okay, in spiders, they breathe with the help of 2 respiratory organs, that is book lungs and also trachea is there. There are varied numbers of book lungs present in species to species. Book lungs is situated in a sac which is lined by thin cuticle and divided into chambers, atrial and pulmonary. This one you need not study. You just have to understand that the spiders, they breathe with the help of the book lungs and the trachea. The spiders, they are unique regarding their respiratory system. They are the only animal group that breathes simultaneously with the lungs and the trachea. Book lungs and the trachea. Okay. So this is how the book lungs looks like. Now the next important topic is respiration in fishes. The fishes, the water flows over gills as fish opens mouth and swims. Respiration in fish takes place with the help of gills, internal gills. Most fish possess gills on either side of their head. You have seen when your mother cuts the fish, the gills. Gills are the tissues made up of feathery structures called gill filaments, providing a large surface area for exchange of gases. A large surface area is crucial for exchange in aquatic organisms as water contains very little amount of dissolved oxygen. The filaments in fish gills are organized in rows in the gill arch. Each filament comprises lamellae, which are discs supplied with capillaries. You can see the gills here. Blood moves in and out of the gills through these small blood vessels. Though gills in fish occupy only a small section of their body, the extensive respiratory surface produced by the filaments renders the whole organism with efficient gas exchange. So the water which flows over the gills, it actually from that water, the oxygen diffuses from the water into the blood. The gills are made up of thousands of gill filaments and they are covered by operculum, a structure called operculum. The dissolved oxygen in the water is less, so they breathe. The fish breathes for many times and it enters the body surface through, and it is transported by the gills. This is how the gill filaments look like. The filaments in the fish gills are organized in rows in the gill arch. You can see the gill arch. Each filament comprises lamellae, which are discs supplied with capillaries. The blood moves in and out of the gills through these small blood vessels. Though gills in fish occupy only a small section of their body, the extensive respiratory surface produced by the filaments renders the whole organism with efficient gas exchange. The next organism which we take up for the study is a frog. Now, just like the fishes, the young one of the frog is the tadpole, and they respire through gills, external gills. In the fishes, I told you it is the internal gills, whereas in the frog it is the external gill. Okay, frogs, they don't have gills and they have to use other factors for respiration such as skin, lungs, lining of the mouth. So the frog, they respire through three types. The frog has three respiratory surfaces on its body. Okay, and it uses this to exchange gas with the surroundings, the skin, the lungs and the lining of the mouth. Frogs, they can breathe both in air and in water. Moist skin, buccal cavity and lungs, these are the respiratory organs. While completely submerged, all of the frog's respiration takes place through the skin. So when the frog is completely submerged in water, they respire through the skin. The skin is composed of thin membranous tissue that is quite permeable to water and contains a large network of blood vessels. So the diffusion, the exchange of gases takes place. A frog may also breathe much like a human by taking air in through their nostrils and down into their lungs. The mechanism of taking air into the lungs is, however, slightly different than in humans. The frogs do not have ribs nor a diaphragm, which in humans helps serve in expand the chest and thereby decreasing the pressure in the lungs, allowing outside air to flow in. Okay. The frogs also have a respiratory surface on the lining of their mouth on which gas exchange takes place readily. This process is their predominant form of breathing. It only fills the lungs occasionally. This is because the lungs which only adults have are poorly developed. Okay, so in the mouth they have another system to respire. Tadpoles, they are water breathers, and the metamorphose, that is the frog, the adult frog, it breathes air breathing frogs. Okay, tadpoles and the larvae of the frogs, they breathe through the gills as they are completely aquatic, whereas the frogs, they are air breathers. So the skin, it is through the skin The frogs respire when it is completely submerged in water. It's very well supplied with the blood vessels. The floor of the mouth is large and well supplied with blood capillaries. So that again helps in respiration. The buccal cavity, it is called the buccal cavity, and lungs, that is also used when they are physically active. It is used only when they are physically active, lungs. So all these three respiratory surfaces, they are kept moist and they are thin and are well supplied with blood vessels. Now finally, we have to deal with the respiration in plants. Do plants respire? This is the question which we always think. As plants do not have any specialized organs like lungs, we can say that plants do not breathe, but they respire. They definitely respire. But how is it done? Even though plants need less energy when compared to the animals, they also utilize glucose for the production of energy. The oxygen needed for the oxidation of glucose is also absorbed from the atmospheric air. Plants have different mechanisms for the exchange of gases. You already know about the stomata seen on the leaves and green tender stems. All parts of the plants respire, but the main respiratory organ of plant is the leaf. Gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide, they enters the leaf through the stomata. During daytime, photosynthesis and respiration take place simultaneously. However, photosynthesis is the more vigorous of the two processes. During daytime, photosynthesis takes place in the leaf. Carbon dioxide from the atmosphere is taken in and oxygen diffuses out of the leaf through stomata. During night, photosynthesis does not take place. Oxygen diffuses through stomata into the leaf. Carbon dioxide and water vapor are given out. The process of evaporation of excess water from the leaves is called transpiration, which you have already studied. So, my question to you is, how do the roots and stems get oxygen? Do they get oxygen? Yes, definitely they get oxygen. Oxygen is inevitable for the existence of all organisms. But how does it occur in plants? There are some small pores on the surface of the stems and roots. They are called lenticels. The exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen takes place in stems and roots through the cells of these lenticels by diffusion. Okay, the small pores seen on the surface of the stems and roots, they are called lenticels, and the exchange of the gases takes place in the stems and roots through the cells of lenticels by diffusion. Okay, so this is how these organisms respire. Okay, so atmospheric air, especially oxygen, it is inevitable for the existence of all organisms. We know that plants play a very important role in producing sufficient oxygen in nature. But uncontrolled human interference in nature has increased the rate of pollution tremendously. So we have to act against this atmospheric pollution, which adversely affects the existence of life on Earth. With that note, I am saying goodbye to you. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.